Well, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for giving me your time. On this podcast, we bring in different guests to talk about their creative careers and the things that got them there. See if there's any lessons that you might be able to take from that, anything you might be able to apply towards your own career. Here we have my coworker Corey. Corey, thank you for coming on.
Of
Corey
course, thanks for
has,
having me.
yeah, Corey has had a lot of experience in the industry, and so I'd like to present him with some questions, maybe get some perspective and insight.
Right on, yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so to start with, I want to ask what initially sparked your interest in the creative field and how did that evolve over time? Like, what was the thing that got the ball rolling for you?
Oh man, where to even begin?
See, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about here.
Yeah, so I've kind of always been involved in a creative space. When I was a kid, I was considered relatively talented when it came to like drawing and art and whatnot. And so I kind of started doing that a lot in elementary school. I even entered like in a couple art competitions and things like that. But it's so funny. My personality is one where if people are telling me that I'm good at something and I should keep doing it as like a way to be professional or whatever, at least at the time, my mind was immediately like, well, if everybody wants me to do this, then I'm not going to do it. So I kind of,
right?
yeah, totally. I kind of shifted away from that until about junior high. Hadn't really been in the art space for a while. Kind of was just floating around doing regular kid stuff. But then junior high, I got involved in music. I started playing guitar, and I'd been playing piano for a few years before that, just kind of off and on a little bit. But again, piano was something where it was like everybody was like, "Oh, you're really good at this. You should keep doing it." And I was just like, "Nah, man, whatever." So of course rebelled, which led me into electric guitar, and that actually stuck, even though I again had people telling me that I was relatively good at it. I was a really fast learner, and with my previous experience in piano, I kind of picked it up relatively quick and stayed playing guitar all the way through high school and into college. And that's where I became part of a music program at my junior college and got my degree in commercial music with an emphasis on performance. So I had to take like classical guitar and performing arts and all that stuff, and
So
had to do recitals.
Your in was more sound than it was visual.
Yeah, definitely. From there, I wanted to stay within the music space, but I hadn't had much luck creating musical projects on my own, whether with friends or not. So I thought, well, what if I kind of shifted and focused on just providing a platform for other local musicians, people who I thought were, in the grand scheme of things, a little more talented than I was, and just needed a space to kind of showcase that skill. And I was in university at this point and was getting my degree in entrepreneurship. And so I was like, oh, this will be kind of the start of an entrepreneurial endeavor to do a production company and kind of combine my collective experience in music and art and graphic design and audio engineering and all that stuff and bring it all together. And I brought in somebody who was supposed to run cameras for me, and that didn't really work out. He didn't hang around for very long.
What was the reason there? Was it creative differences, or did he just not know what he was doing?
Yeah, let's chalk it up to creative differences.
Yeah, okay. Without going into too much detail.
yeah, that's a whole other story. But yeah, and so I just ended up running cameras, and the project itself, I feel like, was relatively successful. Everybody who was a part of it had fun, and there was plans to do a second season, if that's what you want to call it. But I didn't know what I was doing when it came to running cameras, so in my opinion, it just looked like crap. So I decided that if this was something I was going to try to do again, that I needed to learn how to do it better, and I started taking courses and just learning how to operate cameras better and kind of dive into editing and post-production, and it just kind of kept ramping up from there. I moved in with some roommates, and we kind of had our own little production company there for a minute. Again, more closely aligned with musicians and music, but I was, on the video side of things of that, which was really cool. And from there, just kind of kept picking up more projects, doing more side gigs, learning as I went. Then next thing you know, I'm kind of in the corporate space and marketing, and now I'm just kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay, so it was like you started with one thing and ended up finding an affinity for another, would you say?
Yeah, it definitely was. It just kind of fell into this, and then it was like I was the only one within my group that was kind of doing that, and so I just ended up being the de facto person to kind of manage that aspect of what we were trying to create.
You were the camera guy
And
in the group, in the friend group.
yeah, yeah,
I was
totally.
too. I totally was.
And then as a result, the editor and yeah, it just kind of snowballed. I wouldn't say it's something that I had planned to do or planned to have work out in the way that it has, but it's worked out well, and it's still something that I enjoy. As you can tell from that story, I've always been somewhat creative in one form or another, and so
Right.
this is kind of like a combination of all those skills that I picked up over those years, which is
That's
really
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got the visual, the audio, graphic. So yeah, it's been fun.
That's a sick story. I wanted to ask if you could share a pivotal moment or turning point in your career where you realized you wanted to pursue something different than what you originally set out for. Like, what was the one thing where it's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to be doing what I thought I was going to be doing.
Yeah, it would definitely have to be that experience with my camera guy dropping out. It's hard to put into words because again, I kind of just did it because it had to be done, and I've always kind of had this mentality of like, oh well, if nobody's going to do it the way that I want it to be done, then I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, if you
And
want something done right, you got to do it yourself.
yeah. And at that point, I think I was 20, maybe 25. And so it was like, this is something that if I'm going to start doing it, it's going to be, kind of a career move. And at the time, I guess more of a career move in that it's just I'm gaining the knowledge so that way I can communicate better with other people.
Yeah.
Because I as I was trying to start a production company, I think my goal at the time was just like, well, I'll bring in somebody eventually, but now I can communicate with them. I know what I'm talking about, but then that other person just never really came, So I just ended up being the guy, the video guy. Yeah, so I think that was definitely the pivotal moment. Not planned, just it was like, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to learn how to do it right. And
that seems to be how a lot of the biggest moments, I think, at least in my own career and a lot of the people that I've talked to, how the biggest moments, like you said, snowball into the most valuable moments, because a lot of the things that provide value to oneself in their career are completely unexpected, things that will either fall into your lap or like in your position, something where you had to either sink or swim. I'm either going to do this or I'm not going to do it if I want to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish. I think that's a big lesson to take, is at least in the creative field, in the creative line of work, is just be open to anything happen. What skills or experiences do you feel were most instrumental in helping you pivot or adapt to those changes in your career? Was it probably your audio experience in that case, right? Just because that was something that gave you a leg up?
Yeah, definitely. Part of that commercial music degree was also audio engineering. And so and one of those classes was like a 4-hour a week class where we would just sit on ProTools and just make music and learn how to do it.
That's cool.
And learn how to use all the aspects of the program. And then I even became certified in the program. I think it was version 10 at the time, which was a while ago now.
I think I'm in I want to say 16. I had to take a class just like that. It was audio engineering. It was just Pro Tools. And I have the book somewhere at my parents' house, just a big, fat, thick book of how to use the thing. And it's like user certified. And I haven't seen it since.
I still have my book. Yeah. And I think most of it is still relatively applicable as far as like where things are, but I'm sure there are way more features that have been added that I just have no concept of or idea of how they work. But so working in that program, I think definitely gave me a leg up on transferring to a video editing software. And at first I started in Final Cut, which was terrible.
I've never heard a good thing about Final Cut, honestly.
Yeah. Well, so I went from the Final Cut, I think it was 7, and it just was not good. But also the computer I was using at the time was not good because having been.
I was going to say, a lot of the times what I have heard something about Final Cut, like 7 is always referred to as like the classic. I remember reading that Parasite by Bong Joon-ho was cut on Final Cut 7, just basic tools.
I believe it, and I think even Kevin Smith has stated he still uses Final Cut 7 for some of his movies and stuff. So, I mean, I'm sure the program itself was fine, but having done the pirated version, and also I was just on like a really shitty Mac at the time because I was only doing audio engineering. So like the Mac I had was more than enough to run Pro Tools and audio software. And even saying that, if I had too many plugins going, it kind of started to bog down a bit. And so I ended up getting another iMac, which was like a way upgraded, more current version, and still using a different pirated Final Cut. I got Final Cut 10. I'm pretty sure it was 10 at the time, and that worked fine. But once I moved in with my roommates, there was talk of like kind of what's industry standard, what's kind of more consistently used in the space, and Premiere Pro was definitely the go-to at the time. Yeah, as far as features and other stuff. And I was just like, you know what? If I'm gonna do it, I'm just gonna dive. Yeah, just dive in. And also like looking at other jobs and potential jobs at the time. A lot of people required Premiere Pro experience, and so I was just like, well, screw it. I'm just gonna buy the whole suite. And it didn't take too long because again, had just the experience with Final Cut, and some of it was applicable to Premiere. But yeah, so that was kind of the pipeline, was just going from Pro Tools to Final Cut and then into Premiere. And I've pretty much been in Premiere ever since, bouncing around to DaVinci every once in a while for some grading, but that's about it.
Now, with your expertise in Pro Tools and all the audio software, based on what you do know now about where the industry is and where that software is, there's obviously a lot of choices. If somebody wants to get into audio, there's Pro Tools, Logic, right?
Yeah.
And I know and it's not as popular, but I know there's reason. Would you say Pro Tools is still like the way to go? Is that still industry standard for audio production?
I think it still is, just because it's applicable to so many different spaces. There's like a lot of people use it for editing audio for movies and stuff, like sound effects and whatnot. Yeah, I think it's definitely still industry standard as far as like the post-production side of it. Maybe not so much in the music creative space. I know there's a lot of people that use Ableton. I know a handful of audio. Yeah, I know a handful of audio engineers that still use Ableton, and a lot of people like Ableton because I don't know if this is the case now, but even just a few years ago, I think it was still one-time buy. Like, you just bought the license and it was yours forever with updates. And
everything has been subscriptionized now. I hate it.
Even Pro Tools, which really sucks. But I know also Pro Tools has a way for you to buy a lifetime license, but it's like $1,200 or something now, which is just ridiculous. I think it used to be like $500 or something back in the day, and that was with a student discount. Yeah, I definitely think it's still industry standard, just because, like I said, it's applicable in so many different ways, and people use it not just for recording music, but also for recording audio for movies and sound effects and working with that. And yeah, so I think that's the way to go. But there are definitely other fine options to choose from that I think can be used in, as far as depending on what you're using it for. If it's outside of music, I think Pro Tools is probably still the way to go. But
yeah. I think that's just good to know for somebody in the creative space, just because it took me long enough to figure this out. Like I told you earlier, this mic that I'm using now is basically brand new to me. I've had a Yeti available like on my desk or either in my closet since like, God, I want to say like 2013 or 2014. That's just crap sound. Like when you're recording something, or whether it be like at the desk, in the desk office environment, or it's out in the field, if you're even going to consider the video side of things, like having good audio is so incredibly important. And to have a means of, sorry, what was that?
I was just going to say, in some cases, you can have shitty video, but really good audio, and it'll look and sound great. But if you have really nice video, but crap audio, it just ruins the whole experience. It takes people out of it so quick, so it's definitely a real, it's key. Totally.
Yeah. How did unexpected events or challenges, such as the pandemic, impact your career path and influence where you are today? Now, not just the pandemic, but obviously the pandemic is like the biggest thing in recent years. So like, whether it be like a chain of things or just that thing in general, how did X event specifically impact your career path?
That's an interesting question.
I wanted to throw a curveball at you.
Yeah, there's a couple different answers, I guess. So unexpected challenges were, again, that going back to, well, if nobody's going to do it the way that I think it should be done, then I'm just going to do it myself type aspect.
Yeah.
I previously mentioned that I was working with my roommates, but they had certain expectations, I guess, of themselves and what to get out of the business that didn't align with what I was trying to do. You know, I was still in the midst of all these video courses, and part of those courses was a small part of it was the business side of it. And I was in college at the time for an entrepreneurship degree, so I had to take all these other business classes. And I was thinking about how to, I guess, kind of scale what we were doing and what to charge, and learning that, you know, basically your price in a way dictates the customers that you get. And so I wanted to charge not, you know, a ton of money, but I thought what we were
Find
doing,
the sweet spot.
yeah, I thought what we were doing was special, and everybody that I was working with was very skilled and very knowledgeable. I was probably honestly on the low end as far as talent, but still knowledgeable enough to provide something that was better than what most people at the time were getting. And this was even before COVID, when cell phone video became very prominent for ads and like an acceptable medium, you know?
What time period would you say this was? I'm guessing like 2018.
Yeah, it was about 27, maybe into 2018.
It's about a year and a half
And
to 2 years before the pandemic.
yeah, they didn't feel the same way. So we were doing like 10-hour days for some of our clients, you know, music clients or whatever, and making $200 collectively, like not even like each, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah. And so it was, you know, peanuts, absolutely nothing. And so that was definitely a challenge of trying to explain or just shift everybody's perspective that what we were doing had value. But a lot of them felt like if we charged too high, then we were going to push people away. And I understand that concern, but based on what I was learning was that, you know, kind of the field of dreams thing, that if you build it, they will come. And if you charge a certain price, certain people will take you more seriously, and it can potentially lead to more clients. And also,
That's
if we're
more income.
charging, yeah, exactly. And if we're charging a higher price, that means we can work on less projects at a time to kind of maintain the life that we were living or trying to live at the time, and
Right,
pay our
right.
bills, and, you know, still get everything accomplished that we were setting out to accomplish. So that was one particular challenge. And then moving into the pandemic, I had moved out of that house with my roommates, had kind of stopped working with them, still doing a few projects here and there. Right before the pandemic, I had actually started working on student film sets, like through the American Film Institute, and
That is
started
cool.
getting, yeah, it was a blast. And I kind of planned on moving into that space. The first project that I worked on, I was a dolly grip, so kind of loosely involved with the camera department, but, you know, the camera gets put on the dolly and I was the person who was pushing it, and it was a lot of fun. And so I thought I was going to go to, I think it was West LA Community College or something like that, and I was going to go into the grip department and try to specialize in becoming a dolly grip. And the whole reason why I wanted to join that program is because you got hands-on experience. You actually got to go onto film sets and kind of participate
See how
and
things
learn
work
and
in the flow, right?
yeah, and I was totally pumped on it, and I was set to go start courses summer of 2020.
Damn.
And yeah,
That's tough. That's
and
tough.
early March of 2020, I had started working on another AFI film, and this is when COVID had kind of just touched into the United States, and we were all talking about it, and somebody was like, "Oh, I heard there's a couple cases in LA," and we were all kind of like, "Oh, that's crazy,"
It'll be
but
fine, though. It'll blow
you know,
over.
yeah, it'll blow over,
Yeah.
it'll be fine. And
I had the
you
exact
know,
same conversation in San Francisco because I remember at that time I was working at Chipotle just to make some extra money. And
yeah,
all my coworkers were like, the NBA just shut down their season. Like, is this big? Like, are we going to have to worry about this? Are we going to shut down? Are we going to still make money? And those questions were just circling and circling and circling. It was just it was a
yeah.
lot to think about at that time when when you had goals and ambitions, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah, that whole plan just kind of stopped. And I actually knew somebody who was a part of the program even during COVID. And I asked him, I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "Well, it's mostly just like book learning, you know, like, and kind of seeing examples," which I wasn't attracted to, because it was like the main reason why I wanted to do it was to get that hands-on experience.
Hands on, yeah.
yeah, and actually see it happening and be a part of that. And it's like, well, if I can't do it that way, then I don't
What's
want to
the
do
point?
it. Yeah. Why spend the money? And so I was kind of just thinking, like, well, I'll just wait and see how long this COVID thing lasts and, work my way from there. And luckily, towards the end of March, kind of into June, so I guess actually past March, I got an offer to work at a company that I had applied at the year before. And it was kind of just like, well, my freelance work is drying up because I was also working for a motivational speaker at the time, doing, videos and the social media stuff. But his work dried up also as a result of COVID. So it was
Right. Yeah,
like,
everybody
well,
gets shut down.
yeah. So it's like, well, that's done. So I need something to kind of help keep me afloat. So I might as well just take this job. And I did and ended up being there for a year, which led into the job that I currently work now, which is where I met you and still there 3 years
Right.
later.
So for the people watching who might be thinking to themselves that they want to get into these types of jobs, whether it be just working for like the social media stuff, the video production, or even audio production, or even the on set the dolly grip, you know. Firstly, how did you acquire the job for the motivational speaker? Was that just something that you applied to? Was that like through a mutual? And secondly, you went from working these freelance gigs with your roommates to I'm working on AFI film sets. Like how
Mhm.
did you get to that?
Oh, okay. So, some people that I knew in my music courses had actually started up their own production company, and they did it the right way, where one of the guys had started working on film sets himself, kind of after college and during college when we were in the music program, because it was something he was interested in, and he learned a lot, and then decided, well, I can do this on my own as far as like a marketing side gig or whatever.
Like an agency thing?
It was funny, like kind of we were kind of doing it at the same time, but he did it the correct way, whereas I just like jumped in and kind of took a couple online courses and was flying by the seat of my pants. He took his time with it a
Yeah.
little bit and learned from real professional. And so he had started a production company with two of our other classmates. One of them was doing the audio side of things, and the other one was doing like the visual effects type stuff. And they were relatively successful. They had an office out in Corona. Once
Right
I
on.
moved out, yeah, it was really cool. And once I moved out of my house with my roommates, I kind of just hit them up and was like, "Hey, I've seen some of the stuff you guys are doing. It's really good. If you ever need an extra hand or whatever, assistant editor, I'm down." And yeah, I of course clicked because we all knew each other. So I worked with them for quite a while. And the guy who was running audio, he had the in to both the motivational speaker and the student films. I guess
Oh,
I guess he knew, well, the motivational speaker he knew through church, and then the student film stuff, I guess he just knew some student in passing. I actually don't know how he got into contact with that. It may have been a freelance thing that he kind of just managed to grab, or yeah, I don't know the exact details of that. But yeah, he hooked me up for both. And actually, the first AFI film
wow.
that I worked on with him was with him. We drove to set together, and he was running audio, and I was actually supposed to be running audio with him, but there was a mix up and they hired somebody else. And then I was just like, well, if there's anything else you guys need, and they were like, yeah, we need a dolly grip. And I was like, sure, I could totally do that. Like while I'm Googling like what the hell a dolly grip is, because
Right,
I
yeah,
had
right.
no idea.
Find out on the spot and ask for details
Yeah,
later.
yeah, totally. And it ended
Yeah.
up working out. Thankfully, I was able to kind of think quick on my feet and learn fast. But yeah, so he hooked me up for both, and I worked with the motivational speaker for almost 6 months before COVID happened,
Wow.
and it was becoming pretty lucrative. I was going with him to a bunch of different gigs here in SoCal, and there was plans for me to be traveling with him. He did, motivational gigs all across the country, and that was going to be like my main gig for a minute. And then, COVID just screwed everything up on more than one front.
Yeah. COVID really just threw a wrench in everybody's plans. But
Yeah.
what I'm getting from this story is that the lesson or the thing that I think people could take from this is that networking is extremely important. in this business.
Oh, totally.
It's
Yeah.
all about who you know. And that was one of the lessons, I think, even in the last interview that I did, was that like, if you don't know people, if you don't talk to people, you're not going to go anywhere. You have to
hmm
send out the first, like, hey, are you looking for this? Or do you know anybody? And just see where it takes you, honestly, because it seemed like it took you in two directions, the single person, right? He was
hmm
both your ins for these two jobs.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's just a testament.
Yeah. See, I owe him a lot. I owe that whole team a lot. They're just like incredibly talented dudes, and I
That's
learned
cool.
so much working for them. Yeah, it really, I think it really put me in the position that I'm in today, for sure.
Yeah, that's incredible. If there's honestly, if there's just one thing that viewers of this take is that if just talk to people, like come out of your shell. Like if you want to run a business, if you want to be a part of a business, you have to talk to people. It's just networking, networking, networking.
And
Uh,
it's hard, dude. There's been moments where, I went to networking events and I'm by myself and I just felt totally awkward and out of
hmm
place. And some went well, made a couple connections, nothing really panned out from them. Other ones, it was like I maybe talked to a couple people and then, the awkwardness got to be like too much for me. And I was just like, well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to chalk this up as a loss and leave. But,
I'm curious what your outlook is on networking events as a whole, just because I've heard two things. I've heard one thing being that, they're good, they're networking events. Go there, pass out your business card, make connections, make friends. The second thing being the only people that go to networking events are people looking to take advantage of other people. I'm going to a networking event just because I know that there's some sucker there who thinks that going to a networking event is going to benefit him in the long run. And I could try to take advantage of this individual. What is your experience with that?
I think it's a mix of both. That event where I went and ended up feeling awkward and leaving. I think part of the reason why I felt awkward was because I think I was not quite as bad, but I think I was the person trying to take advantage of somebody else, not in like a sucker type of way, but just like
Right, right.
I wanted to find the person who I could convince to let me work for them. And
Is that taking advantage of somebody though, or is that just
maybe
trying to
not.
do business? You know what I mean?
Maybe not, but it's like I think if you go there, you can't go in with like the expectation that like or or the goal of like I'm gonna talk to somebody for the sake of getting a job. I think you have to go and just be genuinely interested in learning from everybody, just talking to them and getting to know who they are and what they
hmm
do.
Yeah, seeing
And yeah,
people in
sure,
business as people.
hand out your business card, whatever. And then, now I would probably say like if I went, yeah, I would just talk to people. I wouldn't really have a goal in mind as far as like what the outcome was, except to talk to as many people as I can, hand out my business card, follow everybody I talk to on social media, and then just like reach out every once in a while or
hmm
respond to their story. I'm still in contact with a lot of people that I worked with on those AFI films. Like
That's
I met a
cool.
handful of people that were, again, super talented and have been doing a lot of good stuff since, even COVID aside, like they managed to
Right.
kind of stay in the industry and do their thing. And even though I am not in that same space, I feel like if I started moving into that space, it's like I've got somebody kind of on the inside that I could reach out to and be like, hey,
hmm
could you take a look at this or let me know your thoughts or whatever, or even bring them on and be like, hey, I've got this gig and you're somebody I know that does this and I trust you, I've seen you work, so come on in and let's do this together. I think that's the overall goal as far as networking is. It's like whether something comes of your relationship or not, somewhere down the line your name might pop up in their head and they might be like, oh, I met this guy and he said he did this. You might be a cool person to bring onto the team, or for
hmm
you might be like, I met somebody and they seem like they were really cool, so let's bring them on. And that's the best case scenario for sure. And that could be years later. Like I worked on
Right.
those AFI films, and it was 2019 was the first one, and then 2020 was the second one, and here we are 4 years later. It's like I haven't really worked with either one of those guys yet, but I'm still in contact with them. We still message every once in a
Right.
while, and
If something came up
so.
where working with them was the appropriate course of action, like it's right there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like it immediately. Like if I joined a team tomorrow and they were like, "We need a producer and a director of photography," I'd be like,
You
"Fucking
got
got
it.
him. Let's do
Yeah.
this." Yeah,
Yeah, I'm in. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. It's funny you mentioned that about literally just talking to people, and because you never know who's going to recommend you, right?
Mm,
They say that the best reference is word of mouth, and it's the the way in which I got my first big client was people on the same street that I grew up with. Their company was looking for a video guy, and they had no idea that I did video. Like they hadn't seen me since I was a kid, and
Hmm.
and so I saw them. I was like, hey, like I don't really know if you remember me, but I'm your neighbor. Let's talk about it. And boom, there we go. And
Yeah.
I'm still working for that company. I'm still doing business with that company. Not
Yeah.
necessarily those people in general, but that was a connection that I inadvertently made, like in my childhood, in my youth, and now here I am as a working adult, working for the company that they are associated with. So it's just the snowball effect
Yeah.
with networking just is massive. It's huge. That's like
Well,
the
and
biggest takeaway.
there's that level of trust there, like you would rather
Mhm.
work with somebody that you've talked to or known for a while, or
Yeah.
broken bread with in one way or another, because it just feels a little bit better as opposed to just like pulling somebody in that you've never
Yeah.
talked to before.
And there's a
And
level of confidence that comes with that as well, because
yeah.
kind of what you're getting.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you can see somebody's reel or whatever that they have their portfolio, and it might be good, but maybe they're an asshole.
Yeah, that
Like,
doesn't tell you who they are as a person,
yeah,
or
yeah.
because like when you see something, for all you know, they outsourced it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There's no way to guarantee that, but if you've talked to somebody and you kind of get a feel for what they're like in a social setting, especially, like,
Hmm.
because I feel like there's definitely walls put up in those, networking situations, but
Hmm.
to some extent, you still have to be a little bit of who you are and talk about yourself, and you can tell a lot, I think, about a person by how they talk about themselves, and
Yeah,
um
it's
and
making a
yeah, so
business
that's
out of first impression.
yeah, totally,
Yeah,
totally.
capitalizing on first impressions, honestly. Well, my next question was going to be, what was the biggest lesson you learned from navigating those challenges in your career? But I mean, judging by the course of the conversation so far, like I think the answer to that would probably be networking, right?
Yeah, networking is a big one for sure. I would say the other lesson is definitely just try to be adaptable,
Be like water, my
Yeah,
friend.
totally, totally. Yeah, Bruce Lee, definitely. And yeah, because it's never going to work out exactly, I think, how you want it to work out. But especially in our space, as far as video production, like and
Facts.
especially
That's
now,
huge.
yeah, you want to be able to know about the post production side of things, whether it's just, straight cutting or visual effects or color
Hmm.
grading. You want to have a little bit of knowledge of that. You also want to know how to operate a camera. You also maybe want to know how to write a little bit. There's all these facets that you kind of need to be able to collect and have some experience in, whether it's, from a book that you read about it or firsthand experience, or
Do you have
working
any
with somebody else.
recommendations on the books?
Oh man, I got a lot of books. I'd have to pull up my Amazon list here, but I've recommended to you Save the Cat. I
Right.
think that's,
Yeah.
a great book as far as writing. There's another book, what's it called? It's like A Long Time Ago in a editing room far, far away, or something like that.
Star
And
Wars.
yeah, it's about the editing process behind Star Wars. I have that book. I've only kind of jumped in a couple different times. I haven't gone all the way through it, but
Hmm.
really good. There's another book by Sid Field where he talks about, is it Sid Field? I don't want to get that name wrong.
The
I'm gonna
name
look
sounds
this up real quick.
familiar.
But yeah, and he talks about yeah, Sid Field. Yeah, there's a book
There you
called
go.
Screenplay, and he talks about just like the quintessential screenplay and like what it is and its goal. And that's another book that I've only gotten like halfway through, and I've only gotten halfway through it because I just started over again just to like really try to soak in what he's talking about,
Yeah.
because it's a
Take it a
lot.
second time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of information. I haven't really read too much as far as like camera operating or even DP type stuff, but
Hmm.
that's mostly just been hands-on experience. But yeah, there's a lot of really good books out there. The knowledge is out there, man. You just need to like
Just got to go
have
find
to
it.
want to. Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
want to get it, and
Hmm.
yeah, just look up what your favorite directors or writers or whoever, their book recommendations, and just kind of pull from that and see what kind of sparks your interest.
That's a really good piece of advice, I think, is seeking out the inspiration behind your own inspiration. I recall Tarantino once said, all the best art is stolen.
Yeah,
right? It was something along those
Yeah.
lines. But you could see a lot of influence in his work. I can't remember what, I think it was called 12 and a half. Maybe it was called like 13 and a half. I know it's a number and a half. It's an old movie. I want to say it was like 30s. Italian cinema, if my memory serves me right. But there's a dancing scene in that movie which directly inspired the dancing in Pulp Fiction. So that's
Mm.
not an original thing, but when you
Yeah.
see
Yeah,
that, you
you're
attribute
right.
it to Tarantino. It's something that your mind automatically goes to that, just because he is a cultured man and knows what's what. So
Well,
take
and
your
even like
inspiration.
even with certain shot, there's the dolly zoom on Jaws, and I don't
Hmm.
that was definitely not the first time that shot was used,
No.
but I think that's one of the more famous examples of it. And it's
Hmm.
like, tons of movies have used that type of shot, or the trunk shot, which is also another kind of one of Tarantino's
I was gonna
go-tos.
say it's a very Tarantino-esque type of shot.
Yeah, exactly. There's all these things that you can say that they're stolen, but I think it's like it's more of like how an artist uses what brush they use for what type of thing they're trying to
Mhm.
paint. It's just like this shot was a great example of how to capture this emotion or this whatever for a scene, or this a point in a movie or something to send the plot point home or whatever. And so somebody's like, well, okay, so if I have a scene like that in my movie, I'm going to use that brush, that width to send that same message, and because
Right.
it's been done, yeah, there's again, the knowledge is out there, so you just need to go out and kind of find your inspiration and see how you can apply it to what you're trying to accomplish.
See what inspired them. Yeah. This part of the conversation just brings me back to one of the ads that you and I worked on earlier this year, where the ad was supposed to be emulating basically how it happened. Just for those watching, we at work had seen a spec ad for Apple. It wasn't a real advertisement, but it very well could have been. Like, you would not have known. But the shots they got were so interesting. And there was this shot where, because it was an Apple spec ad, they were advertising the new phone, and the camera was supposed to be like inside the phone. Like, there was a shot where the user was like tapping on what was the camera lens, but made it look like the phone. And so in one of the ads that we made, we did the same sort of thing, and we had our actor like tapping on the lens of the camera. But it's just another example of, we took inspiration from somebody else who had taken inspiration from something else, and we made
Yeah.
something great out of it. So just taking that lesson and recalling that in future works is something to be aware of, I think. Another one of those lessons: find your inspiration and know what it is. Make it have a purpose. I think, because
Yeah.
inspiration without
Don't
purpose is just an empty idea.
don't do it for the sake of doing it. Do it as a vessel to further, you know, develop or to further express the story and the emotion that you're
Hmm.
trying to accomplish.
Make it have a purpose. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Give it.
if you don't need a dolly zoom in that shot, then don't put a dolly
Don't
zoom
use
in
it.
that shot,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't push it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. If you could go back and give advice to yourself when you were first starting out, what would that advice be?
I think it would be to slow down a bit,
Hmm.
honestly. I hit the ground running just because as somebody who was in the entrepreneurship program, I had that entrepreneurial mindset of just
The
like
push.
hustle, yeah,
Yeah.
and grind. I didn't have enough just experience, like I didn't. I think if I had really sat down and been like, okay, is this something that I really want to do? Then I could have maybe jumped into a film, a more traditional film education, I think. And it's not that I think film school is essential if you want to be a filmmaker or in that space overall.
That is correct. Because
Um,
speaking as somebody who went through film school, I can tell you that it's not
yeah,
necessary, but it helps. It's
yeah.
not
It's
necessary,
just
but it helps.
it's just a way. It's an avenue to kind of get into just the space to have the
Right.
experience. Like the first American Film Institute film that I worked on, dude, they were using like an RE cinema camera with Cook lenses.
That's
They
crazy. That's
yeah,
cool.
they had a freaking what do they call it? The camera operator that's on the I'm totally blanking right now. The arm, that the camera's on, Steadicam
Oh, okay.
operator, and they're like learning how to budget for these films. They're learning what, they're learning the terms, they're learning what each position does.
How to
Like
do
I
these
still don't,
specific things.
yeah, like I don't know, I still don't really know what an assistant director does, like I
Coffee.
kind of saw them. Yeah, right. I saw them on that set, but all they really did was the director would say like, "Okay, cut," and then the assistant director would just say that but louder. So it was like
It's the
I
human megaphone.
yeah, totally. Like, dude, that is crazy, crazy good experience. And everybody who worked on those films has IMDb credits. Like, I have an IMDb credit for both those films that I worked on,
That's
which
cool.
is just
That is insane.
which is
That's cool.
wild, But so that would have been like a really cool experience to have. Granted, I was already out of college at that point, so it would have essentially meant like going back to school and spending another shit ton of money
Right.
that my parents probably would have threw a fit over. But I think if I had just really sat down and thought, what way can I really learn how to do this and learn how to do it right, instead of just being like, okay, like I know the basics, I'm just gonna like jump in, which has its benefits still, of course. Learning by doing. Again, being part of the entrepreneurial program, they told us that entrepreneurship was jumping off a cliff and learning how to build a plane on the way down, type deal.
That's cool. I
Which,
like that analogy.
yeah,
I really like
which
that analogy. That's true.
it's inspirational to a point, but it's also just stressful and
Well, of
a
course,
lot of
because you're
work,
gonna die if you don't make your plane. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then even then you can do everything right and still bomb, which happened to me more or less. The production company itself didn't work out, but I still kind of landed in a way because I'm in the space that I'm in now and
hmm
have a pretty consistent gig with health insurance, which is really great.
Yeah, that's a big thing to have, right?
Yeah. When you're freelancing, you don't really have that. But
Just don't break your leg.
yeah. And so, yeah, I think to a degree, I think if I just, again, really just slowed down for a minute and just considered how can I learn to do this better and thought about ways to get into space to meet those people who were experienced, like my friend who ended up starting his own production company. Like that's how he did it. He went and somehow got his way into working on those AFI film sets before doing his own thing, whereas I kind of did it the other way around. And that first AFI film I worked on, dude, like I learned so much from that, and just seeing how it works is so beneficial instead of just guessing and watching behind the scenes YouTube videos or watching
Right. It's not the same.
other videos. Yeah, and so yeah, I think that's what I would do is I just would really think about how I could have
Slowing down.
learned better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice, honestly. I think that's something that even that I still try to remind myself to do sometimes just because I have so many things that I want to do and I want to get this done and just
Yeah,
there's a spot on that table where I should put my feet and just breathe for a minute,
yeah, that's a good way to put
That's
it.
yeah, Can you describe a project or role that really pushed you creatively and how you overcame those challenges that presented, whether it be like an idea that just came to you like, oh, my problems are solved, or whether you had to like sit down and really plan it and map it out? Like what was your process in overcoming this big block that you were presented with?
So the first real big project I did was a music video for a band that I was working with my roommates, and these guys had a relatively simple idea where they just wanted to be backlit with these like colored lights and just be playing their instruments,
Right.
like individually. So like one shot would be just the bassist, the other one would be the drummer, and then they had a I forget what it's called, but the instrument where you use the mallets, like kind of like a xylophone, but it was
Oh, okay.
electronic.
Yeah, I got you.
If that's even the right instrument. Anyways, it seemed simple enough, but it was something that I had not done at all at that time. And I knew the camera I had and the lenses I had. I had like a Canon
80D.
70D.
Okay,
70.
all right. Close.
70D,
Wow.
and then just like some Canon lenses, which actually the lenses weren't that bad. I still have those lenses. Like, this
Yeah, lenses are
nifty
good.
50 and
Yeah, they last.
35.
The
Yeah.
Canon Nifty 50 is not to be underestimated. I
Yeah.
remember even at my last job, we used that all the time to take video of our product because it's
Mhm.
just good. It's damn good. If you don't have a
Yeah.
Nifty 50, and they're like, it's like that's the pancake lens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like $50 or something like that. They're really cheap. It's something that
Yeah.
everybody should have in their bag.
It was definitely a lens that I utilized a lot up to that point. But the 70D was you only could shoot in 1080, which wasn't terrible, but at the time I was like obsessed with 4K because it was just like, oh, it's so clean,
It was the rave. It was the new thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so my plan was, okay, what we're gonna do is for the first time ever, I was gonna rent a camera because I had worked a couple side gigs where we used the Sony A7S, maybe.
A7S2.
Yeah, A7S2, and I loved it, and I knew it was a low light camera, and I was like, well, if we're gonna shoot on a black backdrop, then we need a low light camera, and I had been reading about cinema lenses and stuff like that, and I had read about the Rokinon lenses, and I knew that they were, obviously not top tier
Budget
cinema lenses, but but budget cinema lenses. And so I was like, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna rent this gear. I'm gonna kind of learn how to use the camera on the fly because I'd only used it a couple different times, and work with these lenses I've never worked with, but I think we're going to get some really good shots. So we set up, we had like essentially these sheets, these black sheets just hung up on the wall, and framed the camera to where it didn't really go past where the edge of that sheet was. And we even had sheets on the ground and everything. And we got like a smoke machine. One of our friends had a smoke machine, and then they had their own lights too. So we set them up in different colors and whatnot. And I was learning about, S-Log and stuff with this camera, and I knew that S-Log 2, it's like a flatter image, and that gives you more information for the color and whatnot, and more room to move and yada yada yada, all that.
It's
stuff
raw without raw, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it also had S-Log 3, and S-Log 3 was like even more flat. And I just thought, oh, okay, well, we'll shoot an S-Log 3 and
see what happens.
And we'll see what happens. And we spent and we had to do all this at night, by the way, too, because like it needed to be really dark, all the lights turned off and everything. We did like a lot of filming. I don't even know how many hours it was, probably like 5 or 6 hours of filming.
Damn.
It was like the drummer playing, different takes, different setups, different light colors, and then the bassist, the other guy, doing all of it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to throw this into the computer tomorrow. And they were going to come back the next day and film more. I put it into my computer, and the S-Log 3, I don't even know to this day really what happened because I just have never worked with it again. But it was like so
Super
flat,
grainy, right? Yeah.
Super grainy and so flat to where like I was pulling the blacks down as far as I could take them without just absolutely crushing them. Yeah. But then it was still like gray, and like still had that flat look. And I was working in Premiere. I hadn't really made the switch over to DaVinci at the time.
Yeah.
Which probably would have helped a lot, but still. And I was just like, dude, like this just looks like shit. And so they came over, and I told them, look, for the most part, everything came out fine except for this aspect of it. I don't know what to do with this, so I think we need to start over, essentially, which really sucked to have that conversation. And they were actually cool about it. They were like, okay, yeah, that's fine. And the bassist was even like, I'm kind of happy because I've been rethinking some aspects, and I want to change the lighting setup a little bit to where like each person has their own color combination, to where like the drums are only going to be these colors, and the bassist is only going to be these colors. But then when we switch to the verse, the colors are going to change to this, and it's going to be mixed, and the choruses are going to have multiple colors. Yeah, exactly. And so then instead of filming that day, we ended up just like sitting there for hours, just like, okay, at this point in the song, for the drums, they're going to be this color, and the bass is going to be this color, and trying out different combinations. And yeah, so it ended up working out. And then I shot the rest of it in S-Log 2 and plugged it into my computer the day out. I think I even did it that night. I was like, okay, I'm going to look at this right now.
Because you want to make sure you didn't make the same mistake again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
and did like a really quick, just like simple grade on it, and it came out looking great. And
Awesome.
yeah, that ended up being one of my favorite videos that I think I've ever done, just because I think for a first time video, it just really, I thought it was really good. I still think it's
Pops.
really good for, for a first time thing of just like flying by the seat of my pants and, renting gear that I'd never really used and
Right.
just trying it all out, and it came out pretty well.
So what I can tell you about that, why it was so grainy, was that the A7S II belongs to the third generation of Sony cameras, and those cameras only shot in 8-bit color or 8-bit data.
Yeah.
So there's a severe lack of data in that image. And to be honest with you, because I have the A7R3 as well as my photo camera. It used to be my video camera until I stepped my game up, but regardless, I tried out S-Log3, and it's just really bad design to make that an option on those cameras. It's dog shit. It's horrible. Because why would you want that on your camera if you can't fucking use it? You know what I mean? It's bad. So like on that generation of cameras, I very quickly learned S-Log2 is the premier choice for anything that you want to make look good with your color. So that's a whole thing. But just every time I hear something about that, I'm like scratching my head, like, why is that even there?
I was just thinking that, like, why is S-Log3 even an option? It just,
why
I mean,
even
maybe
build
now
that into the firmware? I don't get it.
Why even have that many options as far as like something that's supposed to just be raw in the first place?
And if you have like an FX6 now, like a big Sony cinema camera, choosing to shoot on regular S-Log or S-Log2 is one thing, just because you still have color data there, but you can shoot S-Log3 if you want also, but you can't go backwards. You can't be shooting on an A7S2 or an A7R3, A7 III even, and shoot S-Log3 comfortably. It's just stupid. Knowing your color science is super important when it comes to just color stuff and what cameras to use and what cameras not to use. It's just,
most definitely.
I could gripe about Sony for a long time, but that's not the point of this. Okay, moving on. What's a common misconception about working in your field that you'd like to clear up for those just starting out? Like something that people think, oh, I can't do this because, or oh, I should do this, and not knowing that they probably shouldn't. Like just something that people ought to know.
Oh, what a good question. Common misconception. Well, I think you see those memes all the time of like the common misconception about editing, of that they just like, oh, just throw the footage in. We filmed it sequentially, so you just pop it in and like it's done. Like we got it.
Cinema.
Yeah, voila, cinema. Yeah, and I'd say that's probably a huge misconception. Even when I was really first starting out, one of my roommates and I kind of got into a back and forth where I was telling him how long it was going to take, and we had filmed a series of videos for this one drummer, and he was asking me how long it's going to take, and I was like, well, I'll be able to get you maybe like 1 or 2 videos by Sunday. And I think this was like on Monday that we had filmed, and my roommate was like, dude, like, what the fuck? It's really going to take you that long? I was like, yeah, man. And he was like, dude, I'd be pissed. Yeah, he was like, I'd be pissed if somebody told me it was going to take a week for me to get those videos. I was like, dude, first off, we filmed him performing like 3 different songs. It was either 3 or 4. And we did multiple takes of each song, different angles, and I need to have a unique style for each video. I'm not just going to do a cut and whatever. Yeah. I was like, dude, like, he's lucky he's getting 2 videos by Sunday, And also my graduation ceremony was on that Saturday, which was like another aspect. So it was just like, dude,
congratulations, get back to work.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, so I'm definitely not editing on Saturday. So I'm going to be editing all throughout the week, and he's going to get what he fucking gets at the end of the week. And, and then there's edits on top of that if he wants me to change anything. And so once I was like going through the process, he kind of put it together. And I think the reason why he thought it was going to go so much quicker than that was because we had done other videos with like drummers and stuff like that, but it was like one video. And sometimes it was just like the drummer doing, improvisational stuff, kind of showing off some skills or technique. And so it's like one take, and we took like the best take, and it was like, okay, so we're going to use this one take, and that means there's only shots A, B, and C, and we're going to cut in between those, and here's your video, so up to that point, everything had been kind of quick, whereas it was like multiple videos, different styles for each video. And so I think that's one of the major misconceptions,
I would agree. I would agree.
And and if not that, then the other one would probably just be like visual effects. I think a lot of people think it's
Hmm.
like so easy to just like,
Yeah.
oh, you can just click this button and do this thing, and
And make it
you
pop
know,
up and it's all good.
yeah, like
Can't you
fucking
Photoshop
pull.
it?
Yeah,
You can Photoshop it
yeah,
in, right?
yeah. Like, oh, you can just cut this person out from the background
Right,
that they're
yeah.
walking across, and like
And it'll look great.
put this other thing back there. And I mean, now you've got like Sky Replace and DaVinci, which might
Right.
make some of those things easier, but
If you know
still,
what you're doing,
yeah, if you know what you're
Yeah.
doing, yeah, and it could still look like crap, but there's a handful of them, and sometimes they come from they don't know what they don't know, and so they're just making assumptions on some things, and it's like it's really innocent. And then there's other people who are like aggressive with it, who like think they know,
I'm gonna
and
have
they
this in the
just
next
like
12 hours, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Like,
yeah.
so you're just gonna go home and you're gonna upload this whole terabyte of footage and have an edit to me by like 5, right? It's just like,
Mhm.
dude,
I
yeah.
don't
So I think
understand.
those are two of the biggest misconceptions. And also, actually, to add one more, is how long it takes to film something.
That's huge, and I always tell
Yeah,
people, however long I tell you I'm gonna take, expect double, just because
yeah,
like if something always
yeah.
comes up, or I gotta go run and get this, or I gotta fix that. It's never
hmm
ever ever goes as long as you think it's gonna go.
I'd say that's a huge one for sure. And that's something that even we deal with at work all the time. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, we'll just film this. It'll be super quick. And then
and then
2
it's
hours
not quick.
later, 3 hours later. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
But
we're going home, and that's the last thing we did all day, just because it takes a fucking day. You know.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and what a good answer too, just because that goes I think that ties back into your statement about just slowing down. Understand that this is going to take time, and you can't just watch a
Yeah.
couple YouTube videos and study up on this and do one thing well once and be good at
Yeah.
it and have anywhere to go. And like you have to like put years into this if you want it to take you anywhere. That's something
I,
that I think people starting should know.
yeah. I'm definitely one of those people who wants something to be done just for myself, like for my own work. It's like I want to, it's in my head and I just want to do it and have it be done. And why is this taking so long? But it's
Get it
like
off the plate.
realistic. But realistically, if you want it to be good, it takes time. And if you want it to be done right, again, it takes time. Yeah. As far as slowing down, I think it's also, you need to give yourself the ability to be patient with yourself if it's something that you're working on for yourself, and the
Right.
ability to communicate to other people, to be patient that you're working with. And as long as you're doing the work, you're not just like being slow, then yeah, it works out.
That's all great advice, all great things to keep in mind. Last question here. How do you keep yourself inspired and motivated when things don't go as planned or when you face creative blocks? Like what's your process for, all right, I got to push through this. I need to get it done. I'm not only am I going to get it done, but I'm going to get it done right. Like what's your ladder?
Yeah. What is my ladder? I
These
mean,
are some good questions that I put these.
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I put these in Chat GPT. I told them like, this is who I'm interviewing. This is the background. Like, give me some questions that would evoke a good response, and I'm
Yeah.
pretty
This is
satisfied with these
definitely one of
questions.
for sure. Yeah. Good job to you and ChatGPT. What's the best way to put this? I mean, sometimes it's like you just got to do what you got to do.
Let's push through it.
And yeah, and if there's no real deadline, it's just like if the attitude is kind of like, let's just get it done when you get it done. Sometimes it's easier, like you can maybe slow down a little bit, work on something else if you have something else to work on,
Mhm.
and then come back to it with fresh eyes.
That's an amazing thing to keep in mind. Just because
Yeah.
if you're stuck on something and you're staring at it, it's like how when you say a word a bunch of times, it starts
Mhm.
to sound weird.
Yeah.
If you say like avocado like 20 times, it doesn't sound like a real word anymore.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If you're looking at the same project over and over again, and you're trying to figure something out, like sometimes the best thing to do is just forget about the project and walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say if that's an option where you can like stop looking at it for a minute and either A, work on something else, or B, just like even a day or two sometimes is enough to where like you sit down, and maybe you'll sit down and realize it's just a pile of shit and you want to start over
I gotta
anyways.
start over. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe you'll sit down and be like, okay, I see what I was maybe trying to do here, but that makes me think about maybe if I try this, or oh, I see where this can go now versus when I was looking at it I had no idea, and now I can see where it's going, like
Right.
yeah. So I'd say that's that's honestly probably the best way. If you have the ability to take that time away from it, that's the best way to kind of jump back into it with fresh eyes and be re-inspired, I guess, to kind of see it through. But then if you don't have the option to step away from it, sometimes it's just, you're just hitting your head on a brick wall until somehow, some way you break through, which I've had more than one experience of doing that. For our current job, we had to go to Vegas to film an event, and partway through the event, I had to take a bunch of footage that we had filmed that day, like including intros and kind of like establishing shots and all
So
this
important
other
stuff.
establishing aspects, of the event and where we were at and yada yada. And I had to do I think I had to do, maybe it was only one social media post a day, but I think I ended up doing two. And it was like I took it all up to the room and started transferring the footage, and then I jumped into it and it was just like, okay, what the hell am I gonna do? And so then I just start kind of placing what I knew had to be in there. Like obviously we shot an intro, so that has to be there. And well, in the intro we talk about this. So I'm going to put that shot in there. And okay, now that that shot's in there, maybe it leads into this or maybe it doesn't. And then you kind of mess with the pacing of it. And sometimes
That's an editor right there. That's editing,
Yeah, for sure. And on top of that, maybe you're editing just with that footage and it's like, well, maybe if I found some music that I think would fit this first, then I can put the music in and that will kind of help me with the flow or whatever. And then the next thing you know, you're kind of rolling and some ideas are coming together and okay, I can put like a title here, or I can put the logo of this thing here, or I can animate this in or do that or whatever. And then it's a minute long and there's your social media post and it's taken
to go
3 or 4 hours, but you got it, and it's ready to post for the day, which is, sometimes just how it goes. And then now, like in that instance, it was like, okay, now I have almost like a format of the style that we kind of did for this event. So I can apply that to tomorrow's video or the next video or whatever it is for that particular instance.
Establish something.
Yeah. And so, sometimes it's just mixing up your editing process or your filming process, or just, if you normally don't put the music in first, try putting the music in first and set the vibe. And and then on top of that, put in the shots that you need first, and then work from there and kind of see where they fit, see what fits in between, see what leads into what. So yeah, in those instances where you don't have time to like sit back and step away from it, you just need to push on through, just like mix it up, see what inspires you, see what goes in where, and eventually you'll get somewhere. Maybe it's not going to be up to your standards every time, freaking 9 times out of 10, I send something out and I'm just like, oh my God,
this is
suck.
Shit, right?
yeah.
This is
suck.
horrible.
Why? They should fire me, but then I go down.
I sent in today. I was just like, this is garbage. This is,
yeah.
I don't like this, but this is, I guess it looks good.
Yeah. And most of the time you send it in and everybody's like, oh dude, this is great. Like you killed it. I love this. And that's validating to a point. I have a hard time taking compliments, so sometimes somebody will be like,
you don't know
this
editing.
yeah well, yeah, it's like, this is great, and I'll be like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about,
Right.
so why should I value your opinion? But it's still nice, to hear, for sure. And there's definitely a lot of things that I'm proud of, even if it's only moments within certain edits or the entire edit itself. And those have been the result of the time crunch where I just needed to put something together, or, taking a step back and coming back to it and being like, okay, this is how I want to do it.
Yeah. The correct path presents itself to fresh eyes.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that's all the questions that I had. Before we wrap up, I wanna ask. I mean, you've covered a lot of stuff here, and you've gone into some really important things. I think for people who want to know more about business, not just video, but audio as well, since you have some experience in both. But for somebody who just wants to get into the creative field in general, if there's something we haven't touched on, what would what would your message to them be?
My
If we haven't covered it
message,
already.
yeah, well, yeah, there's definitely some takeaways from things that I mentioned. This might actually contradict some of the things I said, where I wished I would have slowed down maybe a little bit. But now, especially within like the film space and creating content, it's so much more accessible now. And I think part of it is a result of COVID. You know, like everybody still had to do marketing or whatever during COVID, and they were just like, all our people are at home. Fuck it, just film with your cell phones. We'll send you like a lav mic or
Yeah.
something to plug in. You know, and sometimes it wasn't even that. It's like you get the whole like reverby audio from their kitchen, and it just sounded like shit, but it still sold the product. You were still aware of what the product was.
And
So I
everybody
think
knew
my
why too. Everybody knew they were home for
yeah.
COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. And but then it totally changed the landscape as far as video production, to where now vertical is very widely accepted, which I hate. But
I hate it.
I would say just do it. If you have an idea for something, and this is for more of like a personal creative endeavor, you know, like if you think you want to make content doing something, just do it, you know, and see. Maybe don't post the first video, or do post it, whatever, to get feedback, but see what you could do better. They say comparison is the thief of joy, but there's also, I think, a lot to learn from comparison. Like when I made that video project that I was doing, that I had to jump onto cameras for, I was taking inspiration from like different kind of interview formats, and as far as YouTube went, I was taking inspiration from like Good Mythical Morning, just in terms of
That's
like
cool.
quality and and how it looked. And I knew that the quality in that comparison was lacking, like severely lacking. So that's where I knew like there's something that I need to learn how to do that I don't know how to do. And so I would say just do it, but try to understand that what you're going to make at first is probably going to suck a little bit. And now in the TikTok space, it might not suck that bad, but
You might get validated if it's horrible.
yeah, totally. And then that's your thing. I mean, toi girl. There you go.
Yeah, that's true. True. Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, have
so
me on your podcast.
yeah, for sure.
Bring me on. Actually,
not hating. I'm just saying, like sometimes that's all it takes. But I would say just do it, and just be open to learning how to do it better. If that's something that you want to do, some people are fine making content just on their cell phone and having it look the way it looks. Again, that's fine. But there's still something to learn there. You can learn how to make your content more engaging. You can learn
an underlying philosophy, no matter what. Is.
Try to read trends, or try to learn if something does do well, why did it do well? You know, and then if you want to take the quality up a notch, whether it be the video side of things or the audio side of things, take the time to learn, and try not to worry about, as far as content creation goes now, it seems like everybody's like, I don't want to be lost in the, vastness of social media and content creation, where if I'm not posting something, then I'm not relevant or whatever. Screw that, man. Just take the time, learn how to do it well, or at least well enough to where maybe you're better than another person who's posting, and now you're kind of shoved up into this quality that's above some other people, and maybe that makes you stand out, so I just jump in, do it, but be open to the learning. And if that's something that you want to experience or chase, then just be open to the whole experience, and kind of pull what you can from all of it, and just find the knowledge, man. It's like we said, the knowledge is out there, and it's way more easily accessible now. I think that would be my be like water, man.
Just go where it takes you.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this information.
Of course, man.
This is all great information, and I think that anybody who wants to take going into this field or industry, whether it be their own freelance thing or 9 to 5, seriously, this is all great stuff for you to keep in mind. This has been Corey Garrett. I want to thank you again for coming on. And
thank you for having me, man. This was fun.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do this again.
Cool.
Maybe we'll get another form of questions, things to talk about, or maybe just something just going on in the industry. But maybe get this going again one more time. This is fun.
That sounds awesome.
I want to thank you for tuning into the video. If you learned something, leave a comment. If you want to talk about something, leave a comment. We'll both be in comments, I'm sure. And we will go from there. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you.